Hello, Kapil, and nice to see you again here on Coaching Conversations, picking up from our first video on how to prepare a presentation.
Yeah, good to see you, Paul. So I think this call is going to be more around the personal preparation for a presentation. So lots to talk about, lots of different hints and tips. So let's fire away, Paul.
Okay, I think the first thing I would start with, based on my experience as a professional guitarist and working with musicians as a coach, is breathing, because your breathing has to be controlled before you start your presentation and during the presentation. And what I do is actually I just do a very short breathing exercise where I basically just breathe out and release all the unnecessary tension, if you want, from my body. And once I have done that, then I start. And you do it very quietly, very softly, on stage, and you can also do it before you start the presentation, obviously, to focus your mind, and that works really well.
Okay, so I assume that kind of gives you a bit more composure, a bit more control of your body movement, your breathing, your heart rate, everything comes together in that case.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So also for me, a good tip that I've used many times in the past is about visualizing the presentation itself and having that sort of practice beforehand. So when I say practice, is more around having to speak to someone or practicing someone with a one-to-one in front of you. So that could be with a friend or family member. It could be even speaking in the mirror. And then it helps you to kind of compose the presentation, get more used to the structure, the topics to talk about, and bring yourself to a good conclusion. And it kind of helps you to get into the rhythm of how you speak and how you present yourself in the presentation itself. So I think having the visualization of you actually presenting the presentation itself, before the day comes, and that's a very good tip for me in the past.
Absolutely. I use it all the time, and it really prepares you for having done that, because when you then actually do it, part of the presentation is just replaying what you have done during your visualization practice, and having recorded yourself and listened to yourself. Absolutely. The other one that of course is key is eye contact. This can be very tricky because sometimes you simply won't have it. If you're doing an online presentation, you may not even be able to see the audience that you are speaking to. So you sort of have to imagine it, what it is like. If you have an audience in front of you on a stage, whether you're doing a TED talk or whatever it might be, having some form of eye contact is very important. The way I do it is that I tend to look around me to different parts of the audience, but not necessarily to focus on individuals, because you can actually get stuck then if you just start looking at one person all the time. But scanning the room, scanning the audience, because from the audience point of view, it actually looks like you're looking directly at them individually, even though you're not, but you are creating eye contact with the audience.
Yeah, and also you're kind of creating that greater engagement, that they're aware that you're also in the same room as them, right? And I suppose when you're doing a video conference call, eye contact, as you said, is going to be quite tricky, quite challenging. So something that I've learned to do is if you have many sort of people or tiles on your Zoom or Microsoft Teams screen, whichever you're using, any kind of platform, if you start actually like gazing around the different tiles, people start to think, oh yeah, they're waiting for a reaction from you as well. So they feel that they're more connected to you in that way. Otherwise, if you're looking to the same camera pin like the entire presentation, that feels like, oh, I can't tell like if the presenter is actually looking at me or feeling I'm being connected or even aware that I'm in the conversation or aware or I'm part of the audience in the first place. So yeah, having a quick sort of gaze, into different tiles like this literally helps them to feel more drawn to the conversation. So definitely a helping point for me for that.
Yeah. The other thing I think that is very important, certainly if you are live on stage, is movement. And by that, I mean physically moving around. Because I think if you just stand in the same spot, it can become a little bit disengaging. And it might only be that your body language is reflected to the audience just right in front of you. But if you actually can move around on the stage, you are drawing in the audience from different parts. And if there's a big screen, of course, where they can see you as well, then that just doubles it up. So I think movement on stage is very, very important for delivering an engaging presentation.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because one thing to also add to that is the gesturing and your hand movement. And one thing I learned is when you're on stage, as you said, and you've got your hands out, you're actually kind of inviting the audience to you rather than feeling too closed away from them. And having your hand movements to gesture in terms like, this is a big idea, I've got a small thing to say to you, I've got a small idea or a big idea or something very widespread to kind of bring to the stage today as well. So I think having that sort of hand movement gestures can actually does help to deliver the presentation and your words in a much more effective way.
Yeah. And the other thing that's important, that's the tone of voice and the volume, so that there is variation in your voice, that you're not speaking at the same level all the time, that you're putting emphasis on certain important words,
Yep.
and that you're making pauses when you're speaking so that people have time to listen, digest, and reflect over what you're saying.
Yep, no, I totally agree. I think I've seen many presentations where the variation in the tone is very minimal, and it's like just like one all the way across, right? And you kind of just feel like you're like not really feeling part of the conversation or part of the presentation. You feel like, well, you kind of draw out very quickly because you're looking for that that vocal variety of tone of voice throughout the whole presentation, which kind of helps you keep engaged as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in particular, either if you're speaking just before lunch when everybody is hungry, or just after lunch where people maybe are starting to be a little bit tired as they're coming back into the hall and sitting down. So engage. And of course, we are all on a continuum, whether we are introvert or extrovert, and most of us are a mixture of both. But I think it is worth remembering that you are delivering a performance, and it does need to be as engaging as it can be, besides obviously having really good content.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And the next point I was going to mention is around pausing. I think this it's quite connected to breathing in some aspects as well. So I think it's quite easy to say so much in such a small amount of time. But when you actually pause in between sentences and certain points, you kind of help to compose yourself again to come on to the next point. And even like a 1 second or 2 second gap is very effective because it allows the audience to take in more of what you're saying rather than just taking so much at the same time where it becomes a bit overbearing. So helping to have a few pauses here and there by every topic at a time have a 1 or 2 second pause, that helps you to kind of help your breathing at the same time, helps you to kind of slow down your speaking as well to a point where you can actually control it rather than just blurting everything out in one go as well. And as I said, it helps the audience to recompose themselves to make sure they absorb every bit of information that you're saying, rather than just everything thrown at them in one one big hit, where it can be very ineffective and not very useful at all.
And what you can use the pauses for, besides thinking about what you're going to say next, is actually making movement on the stage and change direction. And we'll maybe go to the right or the left or whatever. So that's really important. So that's sort of the whole thing about awareness of your body language. There is one other thing which is important before, but maybe also during the presentation, and that's drinking water. So not to be dehydrated.
Yep. Yeah, so I've seen myself on stage a few times where I just feel like, mouth has become very dry because you're saying so much. But even having 1 or 2 sips of water when you need it, it helps to, again, pause yourself, allows the audience to sink in a lot more information at one point in time and think, okay, this person's taking a sip of water. That allows me to kind of recompose myself a little bit, and then on to the next chapter, on to the next slide, on to the next point. So it does help to kind of break out that presentation a much more, easy format to follow in that way.
Yeah, and maybe another thing is sleep, to make sure that you have actually slept well before your presentation, so that you are really functioning cognitively as well as you can and feel relaxed. Because if you're tired, not only will it affect yourself, but the audience may also pick up on it, because you might not have that level of energy that you normally would have, which can affect your presentation.
Yeah, no, definitely so. And one point that I just thought about myself is reading the audience themselves. Do you think they actually are engaged? Yes, we can use eye contact, but do you feel like they're picking up on your ideas? Are they on your way of thinking? Are they nodding along with you? Are they smiling? Do they feel a bit not so kind of engaged? and that can help you to kind of realign the rest of your presentation accordingly, depending on the tone and the overall sense of the audience.
Yeah. So should we just mention what we've been talking about so far and
Yeah,
say
no, definitely
this one? So we started with breathing and get your breath under control.
And then we talked about visualizing the presentation itself. So preparing in advance with a friend, a family member, in the mirror, on video camera, just to get yourself prepped up.
The importance of eye contact when you are engaging with the audience.
Exactly so. And then movement on stage, and how we talked about using your feet effectively and using gestures like your hand movements as well.
Yeah, the variation of tone of voice to make your presentation more engaging.
Yep, and using pausing in between different points that you're making, just so that you can catch yourself, your own breathing, and actually help the audience to feel more engaged with the presentation.
Yeah, not to forget to drink water so you don't become dehydrated.
Exactly, and having lots of sleep and plenty of it to make sure you're up and fresh before the day comes itself.
Fantastic. I think there were some really good suggestions that I hope if you are watching this video that you find useful and might want to include in your next preparation for your presentation.
Yeah, we'd love to hear about what are the 1 or 2 main challenges you see in your own presentations in the professional life, or even like at home, like presenting in general. There's so much to take into consideration. So definitely hope some of these points have helped you going forward.
Absolutely. Great to speak to you, Kapil.
Cheers, Paul. Nice one. Thank you very much. Speak soon.
Bye for now.
Cheers. Bye.